All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the Virtual Residency Workshop 2025, our 11th annual workshop. And it is Wednesday, June 25th, and we are about to start our first afternoon session. This is the Cyber Ambassadors Let's Talk, communicating that there's a problem session with Shelton Carruthers of Canon Medical and Dirk Colbury of Michigan State. And I'm going to turn it over to the two of y'all. Take it away, folks.
Hi, thank you. Let me share my screen. And since we're just coming back from a lunch break, I want everybody to be involved and engaged. So go ahead and open your chat window now if you haven't already. And my co-facilitator, Dirk, will be active in that chat as well. So, as we said, today's topic is Let's Talk. It's communicating a problem. I'll be your facilitator, and Dirk Colby will be helping. This is part of the Cyber Ambassadors Professional Skills Program. And I do want to acknowledge the National Science Foundation funding that helped to create this, and especially also Katie and Dirk and the other collaborators who created the content. You probably heard a little bit more about this in a previous session from Dirk on intake interviews. So if you want to learn more about this, feel free to Google us. As I mentioned, I want to use the chat for some interaction, and
Hey,
this may
Shelton,
also, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you share your slides?
I'm sorry, the slides are not available yet on Google. No.
No, did you share your screen?
Yes, do you not see it?
Does other people see it, or is it just me because I'm a co?
No, I'm not seeing a screen share.
Oh, I see a pulsing blue. Let me.
There we go. That looks
Now
promising.
we see.
Perfect.
All right,
All
thank you,
right.
Shelton.
Sorry. Thank you for checking. I appreciate that. So again, so you can see my name and Dirk's, and so you can see the acknowledgments for the National Science Foundation funded program which developed this program. And again, since we do want to use the to chat, I want to use this that we call Chatter, which is where we have our chat boxes open. We pose a question or a comment topic, and everyone can type in what it is that they want to chat, what their contribution will be, but they don't submit the chat yet. Don't hit enter or click the button. And then I'll do a quick countdown, and then it will just explode into all sorts of chatter. So let's test that out.
Hey, Shelton, hold on. Before you
Please.
test it out, Henry, did you hit record?
There was a pop-up that said recording started.
Oh, I missed it. All right, sorry
Yeah,
about
we
that.
are currently recording.
Perfect. Excellent. So let's now that we're recording, let's get it. Let's try this out. So again, get your chat window open, put your cursor there, and get ready to type. And tell us what is the most interesting place you visited recently. Can be one word, can be a phrase. Don't hit send yet, but I'll give everybody a chance to type that in. What the most interesting place you have visited recently, and then hit enter or click the arrow in 3, 2, 1, chat. Oh wow, they go by way too fast. Rome, Del Mar, Palm Spring, Iceland. Ooh, nice. It's a little warm. I'd like to be in Iceland right now. Great. So I hope that that works and that's clear, and we'll use this a couple of times. But also, please feel free to put things in the chat as we go along. Ask questions, add comments. Like I say, Dirk is helping me out by addressing those as well. So today we want to achieve some of the following learning goals by the end of this approximately 1.25 hours. We want to talk about defining effective problem solving in the context of effective communication. We'll identify some characteristics of 3 common types of problems. We'll describe the impact of communication style, and we'll list factors that can influence individual styles. We'll illustrate the use of expectations and observations to invite conversation while avoiding arguments. And we'll spend just a moment reflecting on the training and identifying areas where they can where you can apply what you've learned. So, in order to achieve those learning goals, we have basically four sections I want to cover today. First, we're going to talk about defining what we mean by effective problem solving. Then we're going to talk about different types of problems and solutions. As I mentioned in the learning goals, we're going to talk about the impact of communication style on that for a little while. And then we're going to end the hour and so with practicing some communication. So, how do we define a problem? Let's do this through a chatter first. So if I say, what's the definition of a problem? What do you think I mean? So put down a word or a phrase in your chat to how do you define a problem? And 3, 2, 1, chat. So software isn't working, bug, got stuck, a challenge to progress, good one, Clara. Iceland, no, that's where you went. I'm kidding. Bugs, things to be solved, unknown, depends. Yeah, depends is a big one. That's a good one. So let's dive a little bit into that. And of course, the font of all knowledge being Google, we can go there for some suggestions of what a definition is. And the first one is pretty good for our context. A matter or situation regarded as unwelcome or harmful and needing to be dealt with and or overcome. So something that's unwelcome or harmful needs to be dealt with and overcome. It also offers something like we might get for homework, a problem set or a math problem, but we're not going to consider that one today. We're going to focus more on this first one. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper about that, defining the problem, and we also want to define a solution with it. So how might we define a problem? Again, like was in the chat, like was in the definition, we have some goal that we want to achieve, and there's some barrier that's preventing us from reaching that goal, an obstacle. So we can use sports as an example for many things, and this is a good one. So let's use soccer or football, depending on where you're from. And my goal is to get the ball in the physical goal, and the goalie is the barrier. So I have a problem with getting the soccer ball into that goal, and the problem is the goalie. And so it's something that needs to be overcome or removed or gone around. So what might we do? Well, there are different ways that we can handle this. But the problem is we want to define a solution of how we get that ball in the goal. Well, one way is I might be able to, if I were a little bit more skilled in soccer, draw the goalie off to one side, quickly pass the ball to my teammate, and the teammate kicks it from the other side and goes around the goalie. That could be a really good solution to this problem. But I could also have a play where my teammate just goes and tackles the goalie and gets him out of the way and I kick it. Obviously, there's a problem with that. So when we talk about defining a solution, we have certain constraints that we have to abide by. Some of those constraints may be regulation or law. Others may be ethics. Others could be just simply resources, etc. And so when we talk about removing that barrier, we talk about doing it in an effective way. We want to define an effective solution. So what do we mean by an effective solution? Well, obviously it's a solution that solves the problem. It removes the barriers. It finds a solution or a way to go around or overcome the barrier. It implements a plan. And it's key to implement that plan, right? It's not just to define what the solution could be, but it's to implement it, make sure that it actually does get implemented and it works. It does in fact solve the problem. But at the same time, we have to work within those constraints. And one of the main constraints, especially in the business world and also our personal lives, is maintaining the relationship. So to build teamwork, to strengthen connections, to create foundations for future successes as well, so that we don't necessarily repeat the problem. So when we talk about an effective solution, then what we really mean is to solve the problem and maintain or build the relationship. And so that's what we mean by effective problem solving. So let's look into a little bit about what different types of problems and potential solutions to those could be. So let's pretend we have a problem. So maybe we all work for the same company that creates widgets. Widgets being any little thing, right, on a factory line, or maybe it's a help desk dealing with tickets. I'll use the example of the factory creating widgets, and so yeah, widgets are always good. Um, and so let's consider, for whatever reason, our sales are down or whatever. I'm the line manager, and I come to the night shift and say, we have to increase production. We have to make more widgets, and we have to do it in quicker, less time. What types of problems might come up with me saying that? So let's go back to the chat. And if I ask all of you line workers to create more widgets in less times, what are some possible problems and or the causes of problems? Chat in 3, 2, 1, chat. Funding, practical limitations, space, quality goes down, line moves too fast, more errors, safety, big one, capacity constraints, low quality. Yeah, and remember it's a night shift as well. So a lot of different ones, and each of these are slightly different. Miscommunication, that's a big one as well. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. So in general, and this is not completely exhaustive, but in general, three very big categories to describe most of the problems that you'll come up with. The problems are based in ability, motivational, or interpersonal problems. And let's dive a little bit more deeper into each of those three. So ability problems is you can translate an ability problem into I can't do this. So it could be for any different factors. It could be a lack of resources, and going back to the chat, that was one of the things. Network errors can also be a lack of knowledge or ability. Well, obviously ability, lack of skills or experience as well. So resources, of course, could be like people, could be money, could be raw materials in order to create the widgets. So how might we solve some of these ability problems if we look into each of those steps a little bit further? You're going to hear me say this over and over and over. Ask questions. Listen. So when solving the ability problems, and indeed when solving any problem, it's really well defining what that problem actually is. So ask the questions in this ability problem. What's going on? If you can't do it, tell me why you can't do it, and then listen very carefully. Is it really ability problem? Is it maybe something else that comes up that we'll talk about in a little bit? Is it a resource specific problem? Listen and be sure that we start to solve the actual problem rather than assuming what the problem is and jumping to a conclusion or jumping to a solution that we did before because we've experienced that before, but in fact, it's not the same problem. So again, listen, and well define what the problem is. Always avoid the assumptions. And then work collaboratively to identify the solutions. With ability problems, something's going to have to be brought in to overcome that lack of ability. It might be resources, it might be training the person, it might be new systems, etc. So let's go back to our widget example. And it could be that, and I think somebody said this in the chat, maybe the manufacturing facility, the worker's line, maybe the hardware itself is already working at max and can't go any faster. If that's a limitation, then we'd need to upgrade the hardware before we can solve this problem. But also maybe it's experience. Maybe because it's a night work, we have very young and inexperienced workers, and they just don't know how to do something. That solution may involve training or some hands-on workshops to build that experience and that skill level before we can actually implement the solution. So that's just some examples about solving the ability problems. Now, another potential problem group is the motivational problems, and it's not that I can't do it; it's that I don't want to do it. And this can be very different reasons for why that is. Maybe it's inconvenient. I don't want to work the night hour. Maybe it's undesirable. Maybe it's difficult. Maybe it's boring. Somebody in the chat said something about safety and errors. So all of these things might be about motivation. Um, it could be undesirable because, hey, you just asked me to do more work in less time. I'm on an hourly wage, so I'm going to get paid less. How is that desirable to me? So motivational problems are a big one and difficult to address, but not impossible. So again, what's the first step? Listen, ask questions, define the problem. So what's really going on? Don't just assume that the person doesn't want to do it because they're an asshole. There's probably a better underlying reason than that, right? So listen carefully. First, make sure that it actually is a motivational problem itself and not an I can't problem. Always avoid the assumptions. Don't jump to the conclusions, or worse, jump to a solution until you understand exactly what the real problem and the source of the problem is. Um, Again, once that's once the source of the motivation is identified and it actually is a motivational problem, then one way to motivate is to communicate the consequences. It's not the only way, but one way is to communicate consequences. And what do we mean by that? Well, there are natural consequences and then there are imposed consequences. So the natural ones are if we don't make parts, we don't have parts to sell. If we don't have parts to sell, we can't meet our customers' demands, or we don't make products, we don't make profit. The system gets, the company gets shut down, we all get fired. I mean, that's going certainly to one extreme. The imposed consequences are something that we have control over, either as managers or as co-workers, et cetera. So an imposed consequence could be, well, if you don't do this, you're going to be fired as an individual. Or if you do this, you'll get a bonus. So imposed consequences are things like that that we can impose. It could also be time off, vacation, a pat on the back. Sometimes respect and recognition goes a long way in motivating. And then the bottom line, as with the other solutions, is to follow up to ensure that the effective solution, that both the problem solving and maintaining the relationship is implemented. So again, if you solve the problem by saying, if the motivation is because I told you to, that might not be an effective solution. It may be a short-term solution, but it might not be that effective solution that we're looking at. So it's always important to follow up, especially for the motivational problems, and perhaps also more so for the next one. So if we go back to our widget example, if the motivational problem is I'm not going to create these extra widgets, then the natural consequence is, well, then we can't fill all of our order demand. If we can't fill all of our order demand, we're either going to lose contracts or we're going to lose sales, or our profits are going to go down, all of which means the company underperforms, which means we don't get our salary and potentially some of us get fired, whatever the consequence is. On the other hand, if we do this, then we will meet those deadlines. We will meet those demands. We will make the profit. Company goes up. Maybe you'll get a bonus. So the third is the interpersonal problems. It's not the I can't. It's not the I don't want to. It's the you can't make me. So there's actually an active interpersonal conflict here that's the source of the problem, and this can be the most difficult. The causes of interpersonal problems can be varied and many. It can be just personality conflicts between workers, between worker and managers, etc. It can be previous negative experiences. And, I got burned once, so I'm not doing this again. It can be lack of mutual respect. I don't like you. I don't think you know what you're talking about, so I'm not going to do what you asked me to do. It can be misunderstandings. You can't make me do this because I understood you to make me to ask me to jump off a cliff when in fact that's in fact not what was asked. So there are a lot of things that can go into interpersonal problems, and they're quite complex and often multifaceted. So solving interpersonal problems can be the hardest thing to do. So what am I going to say? The first thing to do is ask questions and listen, right? So hopefully by now you've detected a theme. Ask questions and listen. What really is going on? But here it's a little bit different than the others, right? So the first thing is to listen and to acknowledge the emotion without judgment. Especially if you're a manager, but even if you're, a coworker or an equal or customer um, client provider relationship, it's important to acknowledge the emotion or the interpersonal conflict without judging. You can say things like, that seems really challenging, or that's a difficult situation, or I see that you're visibly upset. Recognize it, acknowledge it. Emotions are difficult to deal with in the first place, especially with some of us, maybe more so in certain stereotypes than other, and especially at work. So we're kind of trained not to show our emotions at work, and yet the emotions are those things that can be the interpersonal problems. And so the key is to make it a comfortable place where someone can, excuse me, can talk about the emotion without being judged or fear of retribution or fear of being made fun of or something like this. It's also very important, as always, to avoid assumptions. So don't jump to conclusions or jump to the solutions until you understand what the underlying cause, the underlying problem is here. Not just the don't want to, or you can't make me make the parts, but the real underlying part. Also, consider both sides. There's always two or potentially more individuals involved in the interpersonal problems. Um, every one of those participating may have some component of being quote unquote wrong or certainly different from one another. So if you're involved in that, consider that it might actually be that you did something unexpected, or you said something that was misconstrued, or that you were just flat out wrong. Um, and pay attention to the communication style differences between yourself and the others or the multiple people, and adjust accordingly. We'll talk a little bit more about communication styles later. Then the second step is to work collaboratively to fix the relationship or the interpersonal problem first, and then consider solving the overall problem or the first problem that came up. The key is here, it's repair the relationship. You can go nowhere and get nothing done, certainly not long term, without repairing that relationship. And if we simply do what we typically do, is just bury our emotions and ignore the problem and just, you know, hammer on, then we may come to some short-term physical realization of a solution that did not maintain the relationship, but in fact harmed it. So it's more likely this problem will come up again, and it's more likely that it will be severe. And so you really need to take care of the relationship first, not just but first, before continuing with the rest of the work. So let's look at our widget example again. Let's say when I told you this, or the employees, this message, someone burst into tears, or maybe somebody stormed out of the room, or slammed a hand down on the desk, maybe just quietly turned red, maybe just crossed the arms and became silent. All of these are potential triggers or signals for interpersonal problems. Um, and so what the solution would be, of course, solve the relationship first. Go talk to that person, find out what was the problem. Why were you crying and leaving? Again, listen without judgment. Let the person cry. It's okay. And find a solution for the trigger first. Solve that relationship, and then consider solving the overall problem. It could be, yeah. So the strong emotions, I mentioned this, and the example of the person storming out. It's a challenging one, and like I said, strong feelings, well, feelings at all, are typically not shown in the workplace, whether it's taboo or whether it's just our way of working, especially certain people maybe more emotional than others and maybe more concerned about expressing those emotions. Certain people may feel like they're going to be treated differently if they express emotions. So, strong feelings are one, hard to express, and two, maybe not even welcome in some work situations. So, they can get in the way of our logical thinking. They can lead to miscommunications, misunderstandings, total misunderstandings because the emotion was suppressed so much you don't even realize it was a problem. But certainly when we get involved in high emotions, our brains tend to shut down a little bit. We turn into our reptilian response system, and facts and our logical understanding of those facts and dealing with those facts, they can be lost, or they can be confused, or even warped. Um, and I'm certainly guilty of this. As soon as I perceive that I'm in an argument, I just want to win, right? It doesn't matter if it meant that we've made an effective solution or not. I won, and that was what I was going for, even if I wasn't right. And that's not the way to go, right? So we need to do something to overcome this reptilian response to strong emotions. And strong feelings can also put us in a predicament that some people call fool's choice, and which is, if you've not heard that term before, it's this false problem or dilemma where you're forced into two bad options. Typically, they're the two extremes. Neither which of one is really the right choice. So, for example, to steal food or to starve, or maybe I'm a student, my grades are I'm having a hard time this semester, and it's cheat on an exam or risk losing my scholarship. When we're in a strong or stressful situation, these choices seem to be, these extreme sides of the choice seem to be the only option. But in fact, we're just being clouded, our judgment or our options are being clouded by the strong emotions, because there's actually a lot of gray in between those two extremes. So maybe it means we could go to a food bank or ask a friend. That might be hard for us to do, something that we don't want to admit to a friend that we need help getting food, but it's certainly, I would pose a better solution than stealing the food. Um, so how do we address effectively some of these strong emotions? Let's talk a little bit about that. So the first thing, again, is to be non-judgmental, et cetera, as I said before, but to understand that you cannot control someone else's emotions. Now, you can do something to piss them off, sure. And you can also do things to perhaps help to calm them down. But if you've ever been in a situation where, let's say, you've been two people with an emotionally challenged situation, and you say calm down, I'm willing to bet that didn't actually work. Um, but what you can do is you can control your own emotions. So you're in control of your own response, and you could be the one who exhibits the soft speaking, staying calm, exhibiting effective coping behaviors, whether it's pausing, deep breathing, um, not reacting in inflammatory ways. By setting an example And by doing it yourself, you're 50% of the way there. And then the other person simply has to hear, mimic, or internalize those examples as well. So again, managing your own emotions first is that thing to do. Acknowledge emotion without judgment. And you can do that by asking neutral questions. How are you doing? Is everything okay? Again, listen to try and understand what's going on. Listen to the subtle tones, um, and avoid saying, "Oh, I understand," or "I know what you're feeling," because you probably don't actually. And the person will realize that, and that doesn't really help to build trust. But to simply say, I see that you're going through a hard time is much more helpful than saying, oh, I know how you feel. And so that's one way. But again, focus on the individual and their emotional needs first. Fix the emotional situation first before you start trying to solve the problem, because that could just make the emotional part worse. So I want to talk a little bit now about the impact of communication style, especially in context of these interpersonal and these motivational problems, because communication style actually is a very large part in the way that we have effective communications. So effective communication is built on strong relationships. And strong relationships are built on and rely on trust and respect between the parties. And trust and respect takes a great deal of effort to build and maintain. It takes almost nothing to break it. So keeping that trust and respect is foundational. And so when we talk about the effective problem solving, that's why we talk about solving the problem and maintaining the relationship is so important. And maintaining that relationship relies on and helps us to build that trust and respect. And it's key, but that's why it's so hard. And communication style is a key part in maintaining that relationship and having effective communications. So whether you know it or not, we form opinions about people based on their communication styles. It can be cultural. It can be where culture is as small as your family unit, or it can be bigger. It can be based in accent. It can be based on the pitch of voice. For example, we often will, whether conscious or not, assign gender to the what somebody sounds like on the phone, before we've ever seen them in real life or asked them, right? Speed and pacing may also go into the communication style, because if you talk really fast or if you tend to talk before the other person stops talking, then that person may think that you're aggressive, or you're interrupting all the time, or you're rude. Um, so pausing to allow others to speak can be helpful, but it can also be awkward because some people are not used to silent pauses. And if you're pausing, you must be slow. What's wrong with you? So these things happen all the time. Maybe some of you have recognized by now that my accent is perfectly normal, whereas other ones in the call may be from other parts of the world and think that I have a Southern U.S. accent, which may or may not be true. In fact, I was born and raised in the South, and my accent used to be very strong. Um, and I went off to graduate school. I submitted a presentation and was going to do an oral presentation at my first international conference, and of course was nervous and was practicing in front of some of my professors. And he said, "You memorize your first slide, then that'll help you out." So my first slide was introducing myself. I'm Shelton Carruthers, and I'm pleased to share our research from Vanderbilt University. And he stopped me right there, and he said, "No, no, 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 no." He says, "Don't say research, say research." He said, "If you say research the way you sound like a bumpkin." And I was frankly quite offended that he had even said that. And but in the end, actually, my experience over these many years has proved me that he was accurate, and that some people do attribute a Southern accent or slow speech to being dim-witted, like the characters you see in the email and in the movies and such. But now in my job, I work with people all over the world. So European, Japan, China, Indonesia, India, all parts of Europe. The accents are all quite different. But more importantly, I don't speak another language. And I am I am the weak link in that situation because we always have to use English and the others are using English as a second language. And so I catch myself often thinking, they don't know what they're talking about. That's not true at all. They don't know the English way to say what they're thinking about. And so this is something that we have to expect that others are going to judge us, but we also have to be able to control ourselves and not judge others based on that. So again, we tend to like people with similar styles to our own, and we tend to push off and dislike those who are different. So Deborah Tannen is a researcher in communication styles, and says many of our motives, so obvious to us, are never perceived by the people we talk to. Many instances of rudeness, stubbornness, inconsiderateness, or refusal to cooperate are really just caused by differences in conversational style. And that's so true, and that's what I hope that I communicated to you with my personal story. So communication style is critical. Let's talk a little bit about how to do that in starting conversations, not arguments. So the first way to do it is to communicate expectations and observations. What's the difference? Expectations are what I want. Observations are what I see and are fact. And they're quite different because expectations can be argued, facts not so much. I might have inappropriate or unspoken expectations, whereas facts are facts. So it's important to communicate expectations first and then the observations when we communicate. And why is that? If you've ever sent a text message with two questions and the person responds back just answering the second question, you'll understand why we do expectations first and observations second, because we remember that second thing. And it's harder to argue about our observations than it is about expectations. Again, so the goal is to converse, not to argue. And so by having those facts second, it leads to conversation. So what if you start the conversation and you still disagree? Well, expectations and opinions can always be different, and that's okay. They can be, and we can work together. Communicating effectively about diverse ideas, that can cause you to see things differently and come up with new solutions or define problems in different ways, and that's okay. Can you agree to disagree? Yes and no. So yes, if the solution is not, if the idea that you're disagreeing on is not central to the solution. If it's key to the solution, then of course you can't agree to disagree. You can't agree to disagree that 2 + 2 = 4. It's, that's an incontrovertible fact. But you also can't agree to disagree if the solution is critical to the success. So, for example, if you're arguing over about the O-rings being stable in sub-freezing temperature and you're working for NASA, it's not okay to disagree in that situation, right? But when you do agree to disagree, or when you disagree at all, I'm meant to go back to agree to disagree. You're not really agreeing to disagree if you continue to try to convince the other person that you're right. So just dropping it is part of it. But when you disagree and want to move on, follow the ABCs. Agree, build, and compare. So start by finding what you do agree on. Build from there using those points of agreement to have a foundation, and then work up, and then you'll find where you start to separate. And then you can compare those differences, and it may actually help you build a better understanding. It certainly will help you build a better relationship because you understand the why of where you differ. So ABCs, agree, build, and compare when you're in disagreement. So I know I've gone through an awful lot, and we've got about 5 minutes left. I want to go some practices now. And the way we want to do this is we want to communicate expectation and observations. We want to clearly expect the expectation, then clearly describe the observation, and avoid assumptions. So these examples are really short, but it's because of time and space.
Hey,
So,
Sheldon,
yes.
I think we have a lot more than 5 minutes. Henry,
Oh,
correct me if I think we end at 3:45.
Yes, that's correct.
So
oh,
you can
great.
take as much
Great.
time as you need for these.
Thank you. Then I want to go back because I went kind of fast through. I want to go back then. Yeah. So just talking about these, thank you for correcting me there. I'm sorry. I had the wrong notice then. So when you're talking about expectations, what did you expect to happen? When did you expect to happen it? What it to happen? Um, Clearly state those expectations. And then observations are facts, right? It's not what I think I saw, it's what I did see. It's what I can demonstrate. It's what I have in the file or on email or written. It's real facts. When did you observe it? Who was involved, etc. And again, in strong communication, always avoid the assumptions. So never assume that you know everything. So again, let's dive into some of these examples now, and we'll take a little bit more time since we do have it, and talk about each of these. By the way, I did want to say any of you who might be familiar or have gone through an ABET accreditation at a university, it's similar. They state the expectations. Um, the criteria that you're trying to meet. They describe the observations that they saw on the site visit or in the self study. And then they talk about the consequences that if this isn't maintained, you'll not be in compliance or something like that. It's always documented. So this is a very common way of communicating, especially in the engineering world. So here's an example. Dr. Zhou has a problem he's working on. Maybe it's a supercomputer system, and he's having a problem that's affecting his work. And he stopped by the help desk on multiple occasions, probably spoke to different people about the same question. Probably each person went from the beginning and started over trying to solve his question. But obviously, he has not reached his solution. And so Rory is writing a letter to Dr. Zhou. And again, these are artifactually short, so it may sound a little more abrupt than what it would be in real life. But the crux of the story is Dr. Zhou, from now on, please come to me with all questions and comments instead of the IT staff. I realize that there is a problem on the system that's impacting your work, but my staff is trying their best to fix the problem, and your constant interruptions are distracting them and makes fixing the problem take longer. So, in the chat, do you think this is an effective communication for between Rory and Dr. Zhou? 3, 2, 1 chat. Depends. Not effective. No. Yeah. So to begin with, seems hostile. That might be just because it's short or the way I read it. But if he had said it and he said it the way I said it, that's that communication style, right? That Dr. Zhou would have interpreted it to be hostile. So it could definitely be more diplomatic. You're right. So what do we need to do? First, we need to say our expectations. What are our expectations? I guess we probably have a ticket system. So a better way Rory could have done this, not the only way, but one better way, is Rory could have said, the IT department has a ticketing system for our users to submit requests and let us know when there are problems. By the way, the format of the text follows this in all of the examples. expectation, observation, natural consequence, and then follow-up, which is also important, what you expect to happen next. So the green part is Rory explains that we expect you to use the ticketing system. I understand that you came into the office 3 times last week asking our staff to resolve a problem that was impacting your work. Okay, so this is the observation. It's what happened and when. And now we can start to understand, oh, maybe this person was asking different people and they were doing multiple work and didn't see what the others had done because it wasn't tracked in the IT system, in the ticket system, etc. So the natural consequence is that the IT department relies on ticketing system to track problems and assign appropriate staff to address and to follow them. And so the follow-up is please make sure to submit a ticket when you have an IT concern. If you don't receive a response within 48 hours, feel free to email me directly. So this is rather than pissing off Dr. Zhou, now probably helps Dr. Zhou to understand what the IT is experiencing, that they're experiencing some frustration and distraction of their own. They've acknowledged that Dr. Zhou is having a conflict with a problem doing his work, but they've explained what the expected behavior is. And then he's reiterated, please follow the expected one, but if it doesn't work for you, then please contact me directly. So the contact me directly is from now on, please come to me with all your questions instead of the IT staff. Much better, much more diplomatic way to say that, right? Yeah, also more concise. You're right. Let's look at another example. So here's one that's even more short. So Chris writes to Ali, I'm sick and tired of you interrupting me during meetings. My opinion is just as important as yours. Please stop. All right, I'm going to ask in the chat. Yeah, oof is right. I'm going to ask in the chat, looking at the first, not even the first sentence, the first phrase. What do you see there? What might be a situation here? Thinking back to our problems, frustration, lots of red words. Yeah, it's strong emotions. Thanks. Yeah, it's interpersonal, right? This is interpersonal. I can already see that Chris doesn't care much for Ali at the moment, or at least that's what it looks like. And also, Chris might be having some feelings hurt, feeling maybe suppressed or belittled by Ali. Please stop is what Chris wants to happen. So let's look at an example. Again, not the only way, but an example of how Chris could have written this. Again, following expectation, observation, consequences, and then follow up. So the expectation, apparently, is that they have ground rules in their meetings, which is good practice. So the ground rules for our weekly meetings include making sure that everyone has a chance to contribute to the conversation. So it doesn't talk about speaking unobstructed or not interrupting, etc. It talks about the right to contribute. And then comes the observation. I noticed that you interrupted me twice at the meeting this morning. Okay, time, what happened, and presumably it's incontrovertible that it happened twice. Maybe it even happened even more. The consequence was Chris wasn't able to finish Chris's sentence. So, which means I wasn't able to fully explain my idea for the project. It's not enough to stop right there because Ali may hear that and say, oh, okay. So what? I'm going to still interrupt you. And so Chris states the follow-up or what the proposed solution is. I'd like to present my idea at our next meeting. Would you please include 10 minutes for me in the agenda? So here it's not accusatory. I noticed that you interrupted me and therefore I didn't get to communicate what I wanted to contribute. So please give me 10 minutes next time. So again, still short and concise, but certainly far from inflammatory. So sandwiching is an example, is something that people use frequently. It's commonly suggested management style of communicating, where you give a compliment, you say what it is you wanted to say, and then you give another compliment. And so here's an example where Sage or Sage, I don't know, Sage is writing to Alexis with this sandwiching technique. So the letter goes, I really like the energy you're bringing to the team. However, I've noticed that you've stopped writing weekly reports. We really need them. You've also created a wonderful workspace. Keep up the good work. So if I'm Alexis and I read this, I get through here. I see wonderful workspace. Keep up the good work. Man, I'm crushing it. I'm doing a great job. I really appreciate Sage for sending me this congratulatory email. I'm gonna go home happy. Totally missing the thing that was hidden in the middle. So what's the real question here? What's the real problem that's trying to be solved here? In the chat, what do you think the exception, what does Sage really want? 3, 2, 1 chat. Wants the reports. Maybe really just wants the information in the reports even. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's about communication. So here's an example of one way that it could be rewritten. Again, following expectation, observation, and natural consequence. Dear Alexis, each member of our team is expected to submit weekly progress reports. I haven't received your updates for the last 2 weeks, which means that I don't know the current status of your project. Please schedule an appointment within the next 3 days so that we can talk about your progress. So this is pretty clear and straightforward. It doesn't have the keep up the good work, happy feeling, but I think it communicates the real need much better. And still, it doesn't piss off Alexis. I think Alexis knows that. But also, I want to propose that Sage may actually have been making an assumption here. What might one assumption be? Over here, anyway, where he says, I've noticed you've stopped writing weekly reports. Over here, I haven't received your updates for the last 2 weeks. On the left, there's assumption. You haven't written. On the right, there's a fact. I didn't receive. It could well be that Alexis simply sends an email back. Oh, my bad. I put it on the shared drive. I didn't email it to you. She had been writing it, or he had been writing it. Sage just didn't get it. So again, it's important not to make not to make those assumptions, right? Because I think we've all been affected by spam filters where something we were expecting we didn't receive, but the person also did send it. Anyway, so I think that this approach is actually a pretty good example, though. So again, expectations, observations. I haven't received it. Consequence. I don't know the current status. Follow up, or what do I want to happen next? Let's talk about the status. So it's even not so much about that progress report. Sage just needs to know that status. Okay, here's another one for the student intern. So Harley is a student intern, and Quinn apparently is the manager, and writes, you're not spending enough time in the office and therefore not getting enough work done. I need you to either put in the time that's needed, or you need to let me know so I can hire a different student to take your place. Okay, that, I mean, sounds kind of cut and dry, but are there some challenges? I'll say yes. You can put some in the chat if you'd like. It's quite rude and assumptive. Again, rudeness might be the cutting it here. Threatening for sure. It's gonna put Harley on the defensive no matter what, right? Because Harley has now been told Harley's gonna be replaced. Lots of assumptions. You're right. Could it be that Harley doesn't know what enough time is? Um, could it be that Harley doesn't know what the expectations are? Um, so if Quinn rewrites the letter following our expectation, observation, and consequences with some follow-up, here's an example of what it might be. As part of orientation, we explained that interns are expected to be in the office from 8 to 5 with a 1 hour lunch break. I've noticed you haven't been at your desk until after 9:30 this week, and that you were gone by 3 on Tuesday and Wednesday. So again, facts, probably documented, and very specific on which days, Tuesday and Wednesday. Since you weren't at your desk, I wasn't able to talk to you about the draft report you submitted. Please come to my office at 8 tomorrow so we can talk about what's going on. Again, so we can unpack this. It could well be that Harley submitted the draft report, thought all the work was great, done, left, maybe had a dentist appointment or something. Who knows what was going on there? It could have been perfectly good, and Harley might have thought, I've done a great job. I'm getting my work done early, and I'm going to go. So it might be about the work. It might be about attitude. It might be about something else. I don't think Quinn really requires Harley to sit at the desk from 8 to 5 just because he has to be at the desk at 8 to 5, unless it's a customer facing thing, right? So that's to be explained in the expectations as well. But in the end, he wants to talk about the draft, and he wasn't able to do so. So that was a natural consequence. So we talked about defining an effective problem or defining an effective solution to problem solving. We talked about different types of problems and solutions. We talked about communication style and how it impacts the solutions and also the interpersonal problems. We talked about some of these examples. So I just want to remind us that we did talk about effective problem solving and effective communication. I hope that you got that under your belt. We identified the characteristics of 3 common groupings or types of problems. We described the impact of communication style, and we listed some factors that can influence it. We illustrated with some examples how to use expectation and observations to invite a conversation and avoid arguments. And then we did some training. We went through those emails to identify areas as an examples. And so what I would say now is to reflect on what we talked about today, whether it be in the email examples, or probably you can think up some of your own examples, or go back to the widget factory, or maybe reword the widget factory in the concept of a help desk or a ticket solution situation. Think about what we talked about today and what resonated with you. Maybe something that was an important idea that you had not thought about before, or maybe it was something that you actually had experienced before and it's like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Next time that happens, I want to try it this way. Or maybe it's just something that you thought was interesting and you'd like to follow up further on it. Write down or jot down a little bit of something what that was, or go to your calendar and put note to self, hello future self, practice this, or remember when we were talking about that, think more about this, or the next time I interact with John Doe, try that. Think of something that resonated that you want to keep from this training, and I hope there's more than one thing. Jot it down, make a note to yourself, and then revisit it at a future time, so that the training and what we talked about today can become part of your practice and not just part of your history. And with that, I'm actually at the end of our slides, and I apologize for going a little bit early, but that means we have about 10 minutes for some question and answer. I think while it might be difficult to open everybody's mic at the same time, if you want to raise hands or if you just want to type it in the chat, we can handle any questions. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can better see if hands go up. And again, I want to thank Dirk. Dirk has his hand up. I want to thank Dirk again for helping with this and being my co-presenter and helping in the chat. So are there any questions that you'd like Dirk or myself to consider? So Austin, thanks for sharing that. Starting conversations, not arguments. That's for me, that's also true. There are certain people, and it's happened, frankly, more frequently in my past than currently, but there are some people who just rub me the wrong way. And no matter what they say to me, it always makes me, it just triggers, I just want to argue with them. uh, it's something that we have to proactively try to stop, and we can control only our own side of it, right? Uh, Thanks, Austin. Aaron it says, in the widget example, suppose there's a mandate from upper management to increase production. How would you change that in your explanations, please? That's a good question, and we can use some of the examples. I'm going to let Dirk raise his hand like he wanted to make a comment, so I'm gonna let Dirk make that comment because he's been quiet so far.
Yeah, well, so when you change your increased production is an imposed consequence by the company. And so we would use it in the same formula, but that's an imposed consequence instead of a natural consequence, which can help motivate people to solve a problem. I prefer natural consequences in general because if someone's motivated to solve the problem based on something that will happen because of the problem, they're going to be motivated for that from now into the future. Where if you have to impose a consequence, either a negative consequence or a positive consequence, those imposed consequences have to be repeated to keep up motivation, or often have to be repeated to keep up motivation. So natural consequences tend to be better, but imposed consequences happen all the time. I have children.
Absolutely.
I impose consequences all the time.
Yeah, no, that's I was going to say very similar. Imposed consequences, but I think also transparency about those imposed consequences can be quite helpful as well. Now, sometimes the consequence might be that the company is going under, and you don't want to share that. But other times it can be that our competitors are doing strong, the market is doing great, we need to be doing better, so we're going to have to up these. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Aaron. Austin had some follow-up, I guess, to the previous one. Texts that are just the observation and not the consequences, yeah, or expectations. Yeah. Thank you, Vinod or Vinod. Your examples were awesome. That goes to Dirk. Learning to take a step back and not instantly react is a huge step towards more effective communication. Maximilian says, absolutely.
Hey, I got a comment
Dirk.
on that. One of the reasons we did this as an email exercise is it's a great way to slow down and practice the formula that we gave. So expectations, observations, consequences, right? It sort of lets you practice because often our instinct, especially if we're upset, is to instantly go, I'm mad at you, and then spew off an email and it be inconsequential. But you can practice with email. Email is a great practice place, even though sometimes it might be more appropriate to talk to someone in person when there's a problem. Practicing over email gives you the time to think it through. I actually recommend maybe take off the reply address and type out your email first, because I don't know if you've done this, but I've hit reply too soon before I've really flushed out the email, and that's not usually helpful. And so one of the reasons we encourage you to do over this email is not because email is better. It's actually oftentimes worse because you don't have um, body language, but it lets you slow way down and practice, which is one of the great reasons that we like to practice with email.
I think it's good practice always to reread the email before you send it. And that's sort of the equivalent of pause and think before you speak. Yeah, great one. Um, Kira, thanks for the information, especially appreciate the motivational. Thank you. Again, goes to Dirk. Bez, on the topic of communication, space missions, and agreeing to disagree, which came up in passing, folks should check out Janet Vertesi's Shaping Science. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, exactly. Um, Consequences should be empathetic and supportive. Um, that's true. I guess Dirk can probably give a few examples. I can as well, where there is an appropriate time and place for consequences to be a little less empathetic and supportive. Um, uh, uh, Personal improvement plans or PIPs come to mind, but even then, they can be
I
caring.
absolutely, I think they can be always supportive and empathetic, but that doesn't mean that they're not strong consequences.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
typically there are
correct.
two types of imposed consequences. You have, we often use the idiom stick and carrot, right? You can fire someone or you can give them a bonus. Usually we tend to do carrots are more effective than sticks, but not always. And sometimes you do need to threaten to fire someone, right? You're not performing. I've been helping you along. If you do this again, we're going to have to fire you. You can say that in an empathetic way, but it doesn't mean it's not quite harsh. It sometimes has to be.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So Austin's asked another question about introducing change, where change is often threatening to some people. Yeah, I would say change is almost always threatening to almost everyone. Uh, do you want to say, Dirk, or do you want me to come in on that? Yeah, so I mean, introducing change is always it's not in human nature to change. And so the key is to identify what is the threat and what's the real threat versus the perceived threat. Because many times the perceived threat is worse, but easily overcome or shown to be not real. Um, and I think also the cause or the driver of the need for change helps people to understand that it's still threatening, but the return on that investment of enduring the threat, the return on investment is worthwhile. So it's about communicating the consequences, often natural consequences of not changing, or the beneficial consequences of changing, as to why it's worth the hassle or worth the pain, whatever that pain is. Now, in some cases, it could be super extreme, right? I mean, it could be a job ending change for some people. I mean, personally, I've gone through that myself, and job ending is not always the same as life ending either, or even career ending. So it's sort of that going back to that fool's choice, where we're forced to think about these opposite extremes when in fact there's other options inside that we can consider as well. Helps us to deal with that change in the threatening time. So Maximilian talks about seeing the email, often struggle with formatting and take a step back to read through emails before sending. Absolutely. Yeah, and the formula will be a huge help. I hope that it is. Jot it down to yourself for future self to follow up to make sure that you've actually tried it a time or two in the future. Following up in-person discussions like this with email summary so everyone can have shared understanding is a good tip I've got over the years. That is a good tip. Yeah, thanks. Really appreciate email summaries if I did have. Yeah. It's also a good way to capture expectations um, as well, and the follow up. Good. Any other questions? Even if it's from Dirk?
No, I think it was a good session. I really appreciate everybody's help. I hope it's okay with Henry if we are done, or unless Henry wants to close with something.
No, I think we are in a good position, and thank you for a terrific session. I want to thank you all. This was wonderful, and I'm of course always noticing all of the chat going on during the session because I think that's a pretty good metric for participation and engagement. So thank you all, and a quick program note. So our next session is scheduled to start at 3:15. There is a possibility that it might be delayed a few minutes because I'm summoned to happily a Zoom meeting with the VP for Research Office at 3, and I'm hoping to wrap it up pretty quickly. Uh, but I can't guarantee that it will only take 15 minutes. So I might be running a little bit behind. I hope everybody forgives me. And we'll look forward to seeing you at the top of the next session, which is supposed to be quarter after the hour, but might be slightly later than quarter past the hour. So thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Shelton. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
And stay logged in. Uh, Refresh your beverage, take a bio break, catch up on your email, and we'll see you in about half an hour, about 33 and a half minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.